2 Chronicles chapter 1. Solomon, son of David, strengthened his position over the kingdom. The Lord his God was with him and made him very powerful. Solomon spoke to all Israel, to the commanders of regiments and battalions, judges, every prince, and the heads of Israel's families. Then Solomon and the entire assembly went to the place of worship in Gibeon, because God's tent of meeting was there. Moses, the Lord's servant, had made the tent in the desert. However, David had already brought God's ark from Kiriath-Jearim to a place he had prepared for it. He had put up a tent for it in Jerusalem. The bronze altar that Bezalel, son of Uri and grandson of Hur, had made was in front of the Lord's tent. There Solomon and the assembly worshipped the Lord. In the Lord's presence Solomon went to the bronze altar in front of the tent of meeting and sacrificed 1,000 burnt offerings on it. That night God appeared to Solomon. He said, "What can I give you?" Solomon responded to God, "You've shown great love to my father David, and you've made me king in his place. Now, Lord God, you've kept the promise you made to my father David. You've made me king of people who are as numerous as specks of dust on the ground. Give me wisdom and knowledge so that I may lead these people. After all, who can judge this great people of yours?" God replied to Solomon, "I know this request is from your heart. You didn't ask for riches, fortunes, honor, or the death of those who hate you. You didn't even ask for a long life. Instead, you've asked for wisdom and knowledge to judge my people, over whom I made you king. So wisdom and knowledge will be given to you. I will also give you riches, fortunes, and honor like no other king before or after you." Solomon went from the tent of meeting at the place of worship in Gibeon to Jerusalem. And he ruled Israel. Solomon built up his army with chariots and war horses. He had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 war horses. He stationed some in chariot cities and others with himself in Jerusalem. The king made silver and gold as common in Jerusalem as stones, and he made cedars as plentiful as fig trees in the foothills. Solomon's horses were imported from Egypt and Cu. The king's traders bought them from Cu for a fixed price. They imported each chariot from Egypt for 15 pounds of silver and each horse for 6 ounces of silver. For the same price they obtained horses to export to all the Hittite and Aramean kings. 2 Chronicles chapter 2. Solomon gave orders to begin building the temple for the Lord's name and a royal palace for himself. Solomon drafted 70,000 men to carry heavy loads, 80,000 to quarry stones in the mountains, and 3,600 foremen. Solomon sent word to King Huram of Tyre by saying, "Do what you did for my father David. You sent him cedars so that he could build a palace to live in. I want to build the temple for the name of the Lord my God. I want to dedicate it to him, burn sweet-smelling incense in his presence, and have rows of bread there continually. I want to sacrifice burnt offerings every morning and evening, on weekly worship days, new moon festivals, and during the annual festivals appointed by the Lord our God. These festivals are always to be celebrated by Israel. The temple I am building will be great because our God is greater than all other gods. But who is able to build him a temple when heaven itself, the highest heaven, cannot hold him? Who am I to build him a temple except as a place to sacrifice in his presence? Send me a man who has the skill to work with gold, silver, bronze, and iron, as well as purple, dark red, and violet cloth. He should know how to make engravings with the skilled men whom my father David provided for me in Judah and Jerusalem. Send me cedar, cypress, and sandalwood from Lebanon. I know that your servants are skilled Lebanese lumberjacks. My workers will work with your workers. They'll prepare plenty of lumber for me, because the temple I want to build will be large and astonishing. I will give your lumberjacks 120,000 bushels of ground wheat, 120,000 bushels of barley, 200,000 gallons of wine, and 200,000 gallons of olive oil. Then King Huram of Tyre responded to Solomon by sending a letter that said, "Because the Lord loves his people, he made you their king." Huram added, "May the Lord God of Israel be praised. He made the heavens and the earth and has given King David a wise son who has insight and intelligence and can build the Lord's temple and a royal palace. And now, I'm sending a man with skill and intelligence, Huram Abi. He was the son of a woman from the tribe of Dan, and his father is a native of Tyre. Huram knows how to work with gold, silver, bronze, iron, stone, wood, purple, violet, and dark red cloth, and linen. He also knows how to make all kinds of engravings and follow any set of plans that will be given to him. He can work with your skilled workmen and the skilled workmen of His Majesty David, your father. Your Majesty may now send the wheat, barley, olive oil, and wine he promised the workers. We will cut all the lumber you need in Lebanon. Then we will make rafts out of it and send them to you in Joppa by sea. You can take it from there to Jerusalem." Solomon counted all the men who were foreigners in the land of Israel, as his father David had counted them. Solomon counted 153,600 foreigners. He made 70,000 of them carry heavy loads, 80,000 of them quarry stone in the mountains, and 3,600 of them supervise the work as foremen. 2 Chronicles chapter 3. Solomon began to build the Lord's temple in Jerusalem on Mount Moriah, where the Lord appeared to his father David. There David had prepared the site on the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. He began to build on the 2nd day in the 2nd month of the 4th year of his reign. This is how Solomon laid the foundation to build God's temple. It was 90 feet long and 30 feet wide. They used the old standard measurement. The entrance hall in front of the main room was 30 feet wide, the same as the width of the temple, and 30 feet high. He covered its inside walls with pure gold. He paneled the larger building with cypress, overlaid it with fine gold, and decorated it with designs in the form of palm trees and chains. He covered the building with gems to beautify it and used gold from Parvaim. He also overlaid the building, the rafters, the threshold, the walls, and the doors with gold, and he carved angels into the walls. He made the most holy place. It was as long as the temple was wide, 30 feet long. It was also 30 feet wide. He overlaid it with 45,000 pounds of fine gold. The gold nails weighed 20 ounces. He also overlaid the upper rooms with gold. In the most holy place he made 2 sculptured angels and covered them with gold. The combined length of the angels' wings was 30 feet. A wing of one of the angels was 7½ feet long and touched the wall of the building. Its other wing was 7½ feet long and touched one wing of the other. The wing of the other one of the angels was 7½ feet long and touched the other wall of the building. Its other wing was 7½ feet long and touched the wing of the first. So the angels' combined wingspan was 30 feet. They stood on their feet and faced the main hall. Solomon made the canopy of violet, purple, and dark red cloth and of linen and decorated it with angels. He made 2 pillars for the front of the temple. They were 53 feet long, and the capital on each pillar was 7½ feet high. He made chains for the inner room and also put them on the capitals. He made 100 pomegranates and put them on the chains. He set up the pillars in front of the temple, one on the right and the other on the left. He named the one on the right Jachin, he establishes, and the one on the left Boaz, in him is strength. 2 Chronicles chapter 4. He made a bronze altar 30 feet long, 30 feet wide, and 15 feet high. Huram made a pool from cast metal. It was 15 feet in diameter. It was round, 7½ feet high, and had a circumference of 45 feet. Under the rim were 2 rows of figurines shaped like bowls all around the 45-foot circumference of the pool. They were cast in metal when the pool was cast. The pool was set on 12 metal bowls. 3 bowls faced north, 3 faced west, 3 faced south, and 3 faced east. The pool was set on them, and their hind quarters were toward the center of the pool. The pool was 3 inches thick. Its rim was like the rim of a cup, shaped like a lily's bud. It held 18,000 gallons. Huram also made 10 basins for washing and put 5 on the south side and 5 on the north side. The priests rinsed the meat prepared for the burnt offerings in them. They used the pool to wash themselves. Huram made 10 gold lampstands according to their specifications and put them in the temple, 5 on the south side and 5 on the north side. He made 10 tables and put them in the temple, 5 on the south side and 5 on the north side. And he made 100 gold bowls. He also made the priest's courtyard and the large courtyard and its doors. He covered the doors with bronze. He set the pool on the south side in the southeast corner. Huram also made the pots, shovels, and bowls. So Huram finished the work for King Solomon in God's temple. 2 pillars, bowl-shaped capitals on top of the 2 pillars, and 2 sets of filigree to cover the 2 bowl-shaped capitals on top of the pillars, 400 pomegranates for the 2 sets of filigree, 2 rows of pomegranates for each filigree to cover the 2 bowl-shaped capitals on the pillars, 10 stands and 10 basins on the stands, 1 pool and the 12 bowls under it, pots, shovels, and 3-pronged forks. Huram made all of them out of polished bronze for the Lord's temple at King Solomon's request. The king cast them in foundries in the Jordan Valley between Succoth and Zerda. Solomon made so many of these products that no one tried to determine how much the bronze weighed. Solomon made all the furnishings for God's temple, the gold altar, the gold tables on which the bread of the presence was placed, lampstands, and lamps of pure gold to burn as directed in front of the inner room, flowers, lamps, pure gold tongs, snuffers, basins, dishes, incense burners of pure gold, the gold entrance to the temple, the gold doors of the inner room, the most holy place, and the gold doors of the temple. 2 Chronicles chapter 5. All the work Solomon did on the Lord's temple was finished. He brought the holy things that had belonged to his father David, the silver, gold, and all the utensils, and put them in the storerooms of God's temple. Then Solomon assembled the respected leaders of Israel, all the heads of the tribes, and the leaders of the Israelite families. They came to Jerusalem to take the ark of the Lord's promise from the city of David, that is, Zion. All the men of Israel gathered around the king at the festival of booths in the 7th month. When all the leaders of Israel had arrived, the Levites picked up the ark. They brought the ark, the tent of meeting, and all the holy utensils in it to the temple. The priests and the Levites carried them. While King Solomon and the whole assembly from Israel were offering countless sheep and cattle sacrifices in front of the ark, the priests brought the ark of the Lord's promise to its place in the inner room of the temple, the most holy place, under the wings of the angels. The angels' outstretched wings were over the place where the ark rested, so that the angels became a covering above the ark and its poles. The poles were so long that their ends could be seen in the holy place by anyone standing in front of the inner room, but they couldn't be seen outside. They are still there today. There was nothing in the ark except the 2 tablets Moses placed there at Horeb, where the Lord made a promise to the Israelites after they left Egypt. All the priests who were present had performed the ceremonies to make themselves holy to God without regard to staying in their divisions. All the Levites who were musicians, Asaph, Heman, Jeduthun, their sons, and their relatives, were dressed in fine linen and stood east of the altar with cymbals, harps, and lyres. With the musicians were 120 priests blowing trumpets. When the priests left the holy place, the trumpeters and singers praised and thanked the Lord in unison. Accompanied by trumpets, cymbals, and other musical instruments, they sang in praise to the Lord. He is good, His mercy endures forever. Then the Lord's temple was filled with a cloud. The priests couldn't serve because of the cloud. The Lord's glory filled God's temple. 2 Chronicles chapter 6. Then Solomon said, "The Lord said he would live in a dark cloud. But I have built you a high temple, a home for you to live in permanently." Then the king turned around and blessed the whole assembly from Israel while they were standing. "Thanks be to the Lord God of Israel. With his mouth he made a promise to my father David, with his hand he carried it out. He said, 'Ever since I brought my people Israel out of Egypt, I didn't choose any city from the tribes of Israel as a place to build a temple for my name. And I didn't choose any man to be prince over my people Israel. But now I've chosen Jerusalem to be a place for my name. I've chosen David to rule my people Israel.' My father David had his heart set on building a temple for the name of the Lord God of Israel. However, the Lord said to my father David, 'Since you had your heart set on building a temple for my name, your intentions were good. But you must not build the temple. Instead, your own son will build the temple for my name.' The Lord has kept the promise he made. I've taken my father David's place, and I sit on the throne of Israel as the Lord promised. I've built the temple for the name of the Lord God of Israel. I've put the ark which contains the Lord's promise to Israel there." In the presence of the entire assembly of Israel, Solomon stood in front of the Lord's altar. He stretched out his hands to pray. Solomon had made a bronze platform 7½ feet long, 7½ feet wide, and 4½ feet high. He put it in the middle of the courtyard. He stood on the platform, knelt in front of the entire assembly, and stretched out his hands toward heaven. He said, "Lord God of Israel, there is no God like you in heaven or on earth. You keep your promise of mercy to your servants, who obey you wholeheartedly. You have kept your promise to my father David, your servant. With your mouth you promised it. With your hand you carried it out as it is today. Now, Lord God of Israel, keep your promise to my father David, your servant. You said, 'You will never fail to have an heir sitting in front of me on the throne of Israel if your descendants are faithful to me as you have been faithful to me.' So now, Lord God of Israel, may the promise you made to David, your servant, come true. Does God really live on earth with people if heaven itself, the highest heaven, cannot hold you? Then how can this temple that I have built nevertheless? My Lord God, please pay attention to my prayer for mercy. Listen to my cry for help as I pray to you. Day and night may your eyes be on this temple, the place about which you said your name will be there. Listen to me as I pray toward this place. Hear the plea for mercy that your people Israel and I pray toward this place. Hear us in heaven, the place where you live. Hear and forgive. If anyone sins against another person and is required to take an oath and comes to take the oath in front of your altar in this temple, then hear that person in heaven, take action, and make a decision. Repay the guilty person with the proper punishment, but declare the innocent person innocent. An enemy may defeat your people Israel because they have sinned against you. But when your people turn, praise your name, pray, and plead with you in this temple, then hear them in heaven, forgive the sins of your people Israel, and bring them back to the land that you gave to them and their ancestors. When the sky is shut and there's no rain because they are sinning against you and they pray toward this place, praise your name, and turn away from their sin because you made them suffer, then hear them in heaven. Forgive the sins of your servants, your people Israel. Teach them the proper way to live. Then send rain on the land, which you gave to your people as an inheritance. There may be famine in the land. Plant diseases, heat waves, funguses, locusts, or grasshoppers may destroy crops. Enemies may blockade Israel's city gates. During every plague or sickness hear every prayer for mercy made by one person or by all the people in Israel, all who know suffering or pain, who stretch out their hands toward this temple. Hear them in heaven, where you live. Forgive them, and give each person the proper reply. You know what is in their hearts, because you alone know what is in people's hearts. Then, as long as they live in the land that you gave to our ancestors, they will fear you and follow you. People who are not Israelites will come from distant countries because of your great name, mighty hand, and powerful arm. When they come to pray facing this temple, then hear them in heaven, the place where you live. Do everything they ask you so that all the people of the world may know your name and fear you like your people Israel, and learn that this temple which I built bears your name. When your people go to war against their enemies wherever you may send them, and they pray to you toward this city you have chosen and the temple I built for your name, then hear their prayer for mercy in heaven, and do what is right for them. They may sin against you. No one is sinless. You may become angry with them and hand them over to an enemy who takes them to another country as captives, whether it is far or near. If they come to their senses, are sorry for what they've done, and plead with you in the land where they are captives, saying, "We have sinned. We have done wrong. We have been wicked." If they change their attitude toward you in the land where they are captives, if they pray to you toward the land that you gave their ancestors, and the city you have chosen, and the temple I have built for your name, then in heaven, the place where you live, hear their prayer for mercy. Do what is right for them. Forgive your people, who have sinned against you. Finally, my God, may your eyes be open and your ears attentive to the prayers offered in this place. Now arise, and come to your resting place, Lord God, you and the ark of your power. Clothe your priests, Lord God, with salvation. Let your godly ones rejoice in what is good. Lord God, do not reject your anointed one. Remember your mercy to your servant David. 2 Chronicles chapter 7. When Solomon finished praying, fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offerings and the other sacrifices, and the Lord's glory filled the temple. The priests couldn't go into the Lord's temple because the Lord's glory had filled the Lord's temple. When all the Israelites saw the fire come down and the Lord's glory on the temple, they knelt down with their faces on the pavement. They worshipped and praised the Lord, by saying, "He is good, His mercy endures forever." Then the king and all the people offered sacrifices to the Lord. King Solomon offered 22,000 cattle and 120,000 sheep as sacrifices to the Lord. So the king and all the people dedicated God's temple. The priests were standing at their posts. So were the Levites who had the Lord's musical instruments which King David made for praising the Lord with His mercy endures forever, and which he used to offer praise. The priests were opposite the Levites blowing trumpets while all Israel was standing there. Solomon designated the courtyard in front of the Lord's temple as a holy place. He sacrificed the burnt offerings, grain offerings, and the fat because the bronze altar that he had made and that was in front of the Lord was not able to hold all of them. At that time Solomon and all Israel celebrated the festival of booths. A very large crowd had come from the territory between the border of Hamath and the river of Egypt. On the 8th day there was an assembly. They had observed the dedication of the altar for 7 days and celebrated the festival for another 7 days. On the 23rd day of the 7th month, Solomon dismissed the people to their tents. They rejoiced with cheerful hearts for all the blessings the Lord had given David, Solomon, and his people Israel. Solomon finished the Lord's temple and the royal palace and completed everything he had in mind for the Lord's temple and his own palace. Then the Lord appeared to him at night. He said to Solomon, "I have heard your prayer and have chosen this place for myself as a temple for sacrifices. I may shut the sky so that there is no rain, or command grasshoppers to devour the countryside, or send an epidemic among my people. However, if my people, who are called by my name, will humble themselves, pray, search for me, and turn from their evil ways, then I will hear their prayer from heaven, forgive their sins, and heal their country. My eyes will be open, and my ears will pay attention to those prayers at this place. I have chosen and declared this temple holy so that my name may be placed there forever. My eyes and my heart will always be there. If you will be faithful to me as your father David was, do everything I command, and obey my laws and rules, then I will establish your royal dynasty as I said in a promise to your father David. You will never fail to have an heir ruling Israel. But if you and your descendants turn away from me and abandon my commands and laws that I gave you, and follow and serve other gods and worship them, then I will uproot Israel from the land I gave them. I will reject this temple that I declared holy for my name. I will make it an example and an object of ridicule for all the people of the world. Everyone passing by this impressive temple will be appalled. They will ask, why did the Lord do these things to this land and this temple? They will answer themselves, they abandoned the Lord God of their ancestors, who brought them out of Egypt. They adopted other gods, worshipped, and served them. That is why he brought this disaster on them. 2 Chronicles chapter 8. It took Solomon 20 years to build the Lord's house and his own house. He rebuilt the cities Huram gave him, and he had Israelites live in them. Then Solomon went to Hamath-zobah and conquered it. He rebuilt Tadmor in the desert and built all the storage cities in Hamath. He rebuilt Upper Beth-horon and Lower Beth-horon into cities fortified with walls, double-door gates, and bars. He also rebuilt Baalath and all the storage cities that he owned. He built all the cities for his chariots, all the cities for his war horses, and whatever else he wanted to build in Jerusalem, Lebanon, or the entire territory that he governed. The Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites had been left in the land because the Israelites had not been able to destroy them. They were not Israelites, but they had descendants who were still in the land. Solomon drafted them for slave labor. They are still slaves today. But Solomon didn't make any of the Israelites slaves for his projects. Instead, they were the soldiers, officers, generals, and commanders of his chariot and cavalry units. These were the officers in charge of King Solomon's projects, 250 foremen for the people who did the work. Solomon brought Pharaoh's daughter from the city of David to a palace he had built for her. He said, "My wife will not live in the palace of King David of Israel because these places where the Lord's ark has come are holy." Then Solomon sacrificed burnt offerings to the Lord on the Lord's altar that he built in front of the entrance hall. He sacrificed every day, on weekly worship days, on the new moon festivals, and on the 3 annual festivals: the festival of unleavened bread, the festival of weeks, and the festival of booths, as Moses had commanded. As Solomon's father David had directed, he set up the divisions of priests for their service and the divisions of Levites for their appointed places. The Levites were to lead in praising the Lord and to serve beside the priests by doing whatever needed to be done each day. Solomon also set up divisions of doorkeepers at every gate because this is what David, the man of God, had commanded. No one neglected the king's orders to the priests or the Levites in any matter, including the temple's finances. All of Solomon's work was carried out from the day the foundation of the Lord's temple was laid until it was completed. The Lord's temple was now finished. Then Solomon went to the coast near Ezion-Geber and Elath in Edom. Huram sent his own servants and his experienced sailors with ships to Solomon. They went with Solomon's servants to Ophir, got 33,750 pounds of gold, and brought it to King Solomon.